Most people spend their entire lives believing they're not smart enough, when the truth is completely opposite. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in ancient Rome, discovered that true intelligence has nothing to do with IQ tests or academic degrees. He identified 6 specific signs that reveal hidden brilliance in ordinary people, signs that 90% of us display every single day without realizing it. These ancient markers of intelligence have been forgotten by modern society, but once you recognize them in yourself, everything changes. What you're about to discover will completely transform how you see your own mental capabilities. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and comment what part of the world you're watching from, because now I'm going to tell you everything. Have you ever had that moment when a brilliant idea formed in your mind during a meeting, but you kept silent because a voice inside whispered, "Who am I to share this thought?" Perhaps you've watched someone less capable than you get promoted while you remained invisible, wondering if you're just not smart enough to succeed. Or maybe you've abandoned creative projects halfway through because that nagging inner critic convinced you that your work wasn't intelligent enough to matter. If you've experienced any of these situations, you're not alone. These aren't isolated experiences. They're symptoms of a universal human struggle that keeps millions of people from recognizing their true intellectual capabilities. What's fascinating is that according to research from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, people with above-average intelligence are significantly more likely to underestimate their cognitive abilities than those with lower intelligence. This phenomenon, known as the Dunning-Kruger effect in reverse, means that the smarter you actually are, the more likely you are to doubt your intelligence. Think about that for a moment. The very people who have the most intellectual gifts are often the least likely to recognize them. This isn't just an interesting psychological curiosity. It's a tragedy that plays out in countless lives every day. Even more troubling, a Stanford University study found that 76% of professionals experience imposter syndrome at some point in their careers, feeling like intellectual frauds despite evidence of their competence. This psychological barrier doesn't just hurt our self-esteem. It has tangible consequences for our lives and careers. When we fail to recognize our intelligence, we remain silent when we should speak up. We avoid challenges we could easily overcome. We let less capable people make decisions that affect us. And perhaps most painfully, we abandon paths that could lead to fulfillment and success. I want you to pause for a moment and consider. What opportunities have you missed because you doubted your intellectual capabilities? What ideas have you kept to yourself that might have made a difference? What's fascinating is that this struggle isn't new to our modern age. Some of history's greatest minds grappled with the same self-doubt you experience today. Consider Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome and one of the most powerful men in the ancient world. In his private journal, later published as Meditations, he repeatedly questioned his own intellectual capabilities. Despite commanding vast armies and governing millions of people, he wrote, "I was not born with exceptional natural talent," and frequently reminded himself to stop pretending to be what you're not. This Roman emperor, a man educated by the finest tutors money could buy and wielding unimaginable power, still struggled with intellectual self-doubt. If Marcus Aurelius questioned his intelligence while ruling the known world, perhaps we shouldn't be so hard on ourselves. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus approached this problem from the opposite end of the social spectrum. Born a slave, he had no formal education until adulthood, yet he became one of history's most profound thinkers. Epictetus frequently told his students, "It is impossible for a person to begin to learn what they think they already know." His insight reveals something crucial about intelligence. True intellectual growth begins with recognizing what we don't know rather than boasting about what we do. I find this paradox fascinating. Those who are truly intelligent often doubt their abilities, while those with less capacity frequently overestimate themselves. This isn't just ancient wisdom. Modern psychology confirms it through numerous studies on cognitive bias. Our modern world has created a particularly toxic environment for recognizing our intellectual gifts. We're bombarded with images of genius that look nothing like normal human experience. We see Silicon Valley prodigies who build billion-dollar companies before age 30, academic superstars with multiple degrees from elite institutions, social media experts who seem to know everything about everything. No wonder we feel inadequate. We're comparing our behind-the-scenes reality to everyone else's highlight reel. Let me ask you something. Have you ever solved a problem that others found difficult? Have you ever noticed a pattern that others missed? Have you ever explained something in a way that suddenly made it clear to someone who was struggling to understand? If you answered yes to any of these questions, and I'm certain you did, you've demonstrated forms of intelligence that matter far more in real life than what most conventional measures capture. The Stoics offer us a radically different approach to understanding intelligence, one that has nothing to do with IQ tests, academic degrees, or social validation, and everything to do with how we navigate daily challenges. Seneca, another Stoic philosopher who served as advisor to Emperor Nero, wrote extensively about how society misunderstands intelligence. In his letters, he observed that people are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they are most wasteful of the one thing in which it is right to be stingy. Seneca recognized that intelligence isn't about academic credentials or social status. It's about how we use our mental resources and attention. These ancient philosophers weren't marble busts dispensing wisdom from pedestals. They were humans who discovered something profound. True intelligence has very little to do with what society tells us intelligence should be. I want you to try a quick exercise right now. Think of a recent situation where you doubted your intelligence or capability. Maybe it was during a conversation where you held back an idea or a project where you hesitated to take the lead. Just bring that moment to mind. Now, I want you to consider, what if the problem wasn't your intelligence, but rather your definition of what intelligence actually is? What I'm about to share with you over the next several minutes might completely transform how you understand your own mind. By the end of our time together, you'll have practical Stoic tools to recognize and unleash your natural intelligence. This isn't abstract philosophy, but actual mental frameworks you can apply the very next time someone, including yourself, makes you question your intellectual worth. The cost of not recognizing our true intelligence is immense. I've worked with countless people who limited their careers, relationships, and contributions because they fundamentally misunderstood what makes them intelligent. They were looking for validation in all the wrong places while overlooking their genuine intellectual gifts. One person I worked with, let's call him Michael, had spent years feeling intellectually inferior because he didn't have the formal education his colleagues possessed. He would sit in meetings with brilliant ideas but rarely share them. When I helped him understand the 6 markers of intelligence that the Stoics identified, he realized he possessed intellectual strengths his credentialed colleagues lacked entirely. Within months of this realization, he was leading projects and receiving recognition that had previously seemed impossible. The transformation wasn't about becoming more intelligent. It was about recognizing the intelligence he already possessed. This pattern repeats itself constantly. People who feel intellectually inadequate are often looking at the wrong metrics entirely. They're judging themselves against standards that have little to do with meaningful intelligence in real-world situations. The 6 markers of intelligence that we'll explore together come directly from Stoic philosophy, but they're confirmed by modern neuroscience and psychology. These aren't abstract concepts. They're practical capabilities you can develop and strengthen. Let me give you a preview of what we'll cover. The first marker is what I call cognitive separation. the ability to distinguish between facts and your interpretations of them. This single distinction can transform how you respond to challenges and criticism. The second is mental prototyping, the capacity to anticipate potential outcomes before acting. This form of intelligence prevents problems that others can't even see coming. The third is adversity leverage, the ability to transform obstacles into advantages, using problems as catalysts for growth and innovation. The fourth is emotional sovereignty, mastery over emotional reactions rather than being controlled by them, allowing clear thinking even under pressure. The fifth is value discernment, the ability to distinguish between what's genuinely important and what merely appears important. And the sixth is interconnected thinking, seeing relationships between seemingly unrelated concepts, the type of thinking that drives innovation. Each of these forms of intelligence is more valuable in real life than the narrow types of intelligence measured by conventional tests, and each can be developed through specific practices that we'll explore together. I promise you this: after learning these 6 signs of intelligence that the Stoics identified centuries ago, you'll never again doubt the power of your mind. You'll recognize capabilities you've had all along, but failed to see because you were looking in all the wrong places. Think about what this means for you personally. No more holding back in meetings because you doubt your contributions. No more watching less capable people advance while you remain stuck. No more abandoning creative projects because that voice of doubt becomes too loud. Instead, you'll approach challenges with a quiet confidence that comes from recognizing your true intellectual strengths. You'll make decisions with clarity and wisdom. You'll navigate complex situations with an ease that others notice and admire. This isn't about becoming someone you're not. It's about recognizing who you've been all along. Before we dive deeper into each of these 6 markers, I want to address something important. This isn't about dismissing formal education or specialized knowledge. Those things have their place, but they're only a small part of what makes someone truly intelligent in ways that matter. I've known people with multiple advanced degrees who lack the basic wisdom to make good life decisions. And I've known people with minimal formal education who demonstrate profound intelligence in navigating complex challenges. The difference isn't in their credentials, it's in their mastery of these 6 capabilities that the Stoics identified. In our next section, we'll explore the first and perhaps most fundamental marker of intelligence: cognitive separation. This is the ability that Marcus Aurelius practiced when he wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." This isn't just ancient wisdom, it's supported by modern neuroscience. Research from Harvard Medical School shows that people who can separate events from their interpretations of events show greater activity in the prefrontal cortex, the brain region associated with executive function and higher-order thinking. But before we explore cognitive separation, I want you to take a moment to reflect on what we've covered so far. Has your understanding of intelligence already begun to shift? Can you see how you might possess forms of intelligence that you haven't been giving yourself credit for? The journey we're beginning together isn't just about learning new concepts. It's about recognizing capabilities you've had all along, but failed to see because you were looking in all the wrong places. It's about reclaiming your intellectual confidence, not through empty affirmations, but through a deeper understanding of what intelligence truly is. But before we dive deeper, we need to understand the first sign of intelligence that the Stoics identified, something so powerful that it can instantly transform any challenging situation. It's a skill that Epictetus, a slave who became one of history's greatest philosophers, called the key to mental freedom. Let's discover how this simple distinction can change everything. Now that we've identified the challenge so many of us face, doubting our intelligence while looking in all the wrong places for validation, let's explore the first and perhaps most powerful marker of Stoic intelligence: cognitive separation. This isn't just some abstract philosophical concept. It's a practical mental skill that can transform how you respond to every challenging situation in your life. Imagine you're in a meeting and your boss criticizes your presentation. Two things happen almost simultaneously: the objective event, your boss's words, and your interpretation of that event: I'm terrible at my job, or my boss hates me. Most people never separate these two elements. They experience them as a single, unified reality. But the Stoics discovered something revolutionary. These are actually two completely different things. Marcus Aurelius expressed this perfectly when he wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." This insight isn't just ancient wisdom. It's the foundation of modern cognitive behavioral therapy and a key principle in neuroscience. Cognitive separation is the ability to distinguish between objective facts and your subjective interpretations of those facts. It's like developing a mental partition that allows you to say, "This happened," and separately, "This is what I'm thinking about what happened." Let me give you a modern example. Imagine checking your phone and seeing that a friend hasn't replied to your message from 3 days ago. The fact is simply, no response has been received after 72 hours. But your interpretation might be, they're ignoring me, or they're angry with me, or they don't value our friendship. Those interpretations feel real, but they're actually mental creations, not facts. This distinction isn't just semantics, it's the difference between emotional reactivity and intellectual clarity. When you confuse facts with interpretations, you respond to your thoughts about reality rather than reality itself. But when you separate them, you gain a power that most people never experience: the ability to choose your response rather than being driven by automatic reactions. Harvard Medical School researchers have found that people who can separate events from their interpretations show greater activity in the prefrontal cortex, the brain region associated with executive function and higher-order thinking. In other words, this isn't just philosophy, it's neurologically measurable intelligence in action. Let me tell you about Michael, a software developer I worked with. Despite having no formal education, Michael consistently outperformed his credentialed colleagues. His secret: when faced with coding problems that frustrated others, Michael would say, "The code isn't working yet," instead of, "I can't figure this out because I'm not smart enough." This subtle difference in framing allowed him to approach problems with clarity, while his smarter colleagues remained stuck in emotional reactions. The power of cognitive separation becomes even more apparent when we consider how it functions under pressure. When you receive criticism, get rejected, or face failure, your interpretations typically generate powerful emotions that hijack your thinking. But when you separate facts from interpretations, you maintain intellectual clarity even in difficult situations. I want you to try a simple exercise right now. Think of a recent situation that caused you stress or emotional discomfort. Now, take a mental step back and identify just the observable facts, only what a camera would record, without any judgment or interpretation. Then, separately, notice your interpretations of those facts. For example, if you were overlooked for a promotion, the fact might be, the position was given to someone else. Your interpretations might include, "I'm not valued," "I'll never advance in my career," or "the system is unfair." Simply recognizing the difference between these two categories can immediately reduce emotional reactivity and increase your intellectual clarity. This isn't about suppressing your interpretations or pretending they don't exist. It's about recognizing them for what they are: mental constructs that may or may not accurately reflect reality. This recognition gives you the space to ask, is this interpretation helpful? Is it accurate? Is there another way to look at this situation? The Stoics practiced this separation rigorously. Epictetus taught his students, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them." This insight is just as relevant in our modern world of social media, workplace dynamics, and personal relationships as it was in ancient Rome. Think about how social media affects your mood and self-perception. When you see carefully curated highlights from others' lives, the facts are simply, Person X posted images of a vacation, or Person Y announced a professional achievement. But your interpretations might include, everyone is happier than me, I'm falling behind, or my life is inadequate. Cognitive separation allows you to recognize these interpretations as mental constructs rather than objective reality. This doesn't just reduce social media anxiety. It reveals a level of intelligence that most people never develop. The ability to see clearly through the distortions that cloud judgment. One of the most powerful applications of cognitive separation is in how you respond to your own mistakes and failures. When you fail at something, the fact might be, the attempt did not achieve the desired outcome. But your interpretation might be, I am a failure, or I'll never succeed at anything. Notice how the interpretation leaps from a specific event to a global judgment about your worth or capabilities. This cognitive distortion happens automatically unless you've developed the intelligence to separate facts from interpretations. I recommend a practical technique called the two-column exercise. Take a sheet of paper and draw a line down the middle. On the left side, write only observable facts about a situation, things everyone would agree on regardless of perspective. On the right side, write your interpretations, judgments, or assumptions about those facts. For example, fact, my proposal wasn't selected by the team. Interpretation, my idea wasn't good enough, or no one values my input. Do this exercise at least once daily, especially in situations that trigger strong emotions. By day 7, you'll begin noticing the separation happening automatically in your mind, a clear sign of your intelligence activating. Many people find this exercise uncomfortable at first. I certainly did. We're so accustomed to treating our interpretations as facts that separating them feels strange. But push through this discomfort. By the end of the week, you'll experience moments of clarity that reveal just how intelligent your natural thinking can be when freed from interpretive distortions. A powerful variation of this exercise is what I call the 5-second interruption. When you notice yourself becoming emotionally reactive to a situation, pause for 5 seconds and ask, what are the facts here, and what are my interpretations? This brief interruption can break the automatic fusion of events and interpretations, creating space for more intelligent responses. This practice transforms not just how you respond to external events, but also how you relate to your own thoughts. Most people identify completely with their thinking, experiencing every thought as a direct reflection of reality. But those with this marker of Stoic intelligence recognize thoughts as mental events that may or may not accurately represent the world. Seneca described this when he wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." His insight recognizes that our interpretations, our imaginative elaborations on facts, are frequently the source of our distress rather than the facts themselves. You're displaying this sign of intelligence whenever you catch yourself saying, "This situation is challenging, but not inherently good or bad," instead of catastrophizing. This ability to separate facts from interpretations is more valuable than a genius-level IQ that's hijacked by emotional reactions to every obstacle. I've seen this transformation in countless people. One woman I worked with had struggled with workplace anxiety for years, constantly interpreting colleagues' actions as evidence that she was disliked or incompetent. After practicing cognitive separation for just 3 weeks, she reported not only feeling more calm at work, but also making better decisions and contributing more confidently in meetings. Her intelligence hadn't increased. It had been unleashed by removing the interpretive distortions that had previously clouded her thinking. This is the paradox of cognitive separation. It doesn't require becoming smarter in the conventional sense. It requires recognizing the ways your existing intelligence gets hijacked by automatic interpretations. When you develop this awareness, you access mental clarity that most people never experience. The practice of cognitive separation becomes even more valuable during conflict. When someone says something that feels like an attack, most people react to their interpretation, "They're disrespecting me," rather than the objective fact, specific words were spoken. This creates escalation as each person responds not to what actually happened, but to their increasingly distorted interpretations. Those with this marker of Stoic intelligence break this cycle by maintaining clarity about what is fact and what is interpretation. This doesn't mean they never feel hurt or angry. It means they don't confuse those feelings with objective reality. This clarity allows for responses based on wisdom rather than reactivity. The intelligence revealed through cognitive separation isn't about processing information faster or having more knowledge. It's about seeing reality more clearly by recognizing when you're adding interpretive layers to simple facts. This clarity is what allows for wisdom in decision-making, effectiveness in action, and resilience in the face of challenges. As you develop this capacity, you'll notice something remarkable. Problems that seemed overwhelming become manageable. Conflicts that seemed intractable become resolvable. Situations that triggered emotional reactions become opportunities for thoughtful response. This isn't positive thinking or wishful optimism. It's intellectual clarity achieved through the disciplined practice of distinguishing between what is happening and what you think about what is happening. Pause this video right now and identify one situation from today where you can practice this separation. Take 30 seconds to distinguish between the facts of what happened and your interpretation of what it means. As powerful as cognitive separation is, it's just the first of 6 markers of Stoic intelligence. In our next segment, we'll explore the second marker, mental prototyping, the ability to anticipate potential outcomes before acting. This practice isn't overthinking. It's a sophisticated form of intelligence that allows you to navigate complex situations with greater skill than most people ever develop. But before we move on, remember that cognitive separation isn't a one-time achievement, but an ongoing practice. Each time you distinguish between facts and interpretations, you strengthen neural pathways associated with this form of intelligence. Like any skill, it becomes more natural and automatic with consistent practice. The next time you feel yourself becoming emotionally reactive, remember Marcus Aurelius's words. The mind adapts and converts to its own purposes, the obstacle to our acting. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This transformation begins with the simple but powerful practice of cognitive separation. But cognitive separation is just the beginning. The second Stoic intelligence marker is what I call mental prototyping, the ability to anticipate potential outcomes before acting. This practice of mentally rehearsing scenarios isn't overthinking. It's a sophisticated form of intelligence that allows you to navigate complex situations with greater skill. That moment when you pause before hitting send on an emotional email, that's not hesitation. It's actually a sophisticated form of intelligence that most people never develop. Seneca called this ability the rehearsal of future ills, but I prefer a more modern term, mental prototyping. It's the second marker of Stoic intelligence, and it might be the most undervalued mental skill in our fast-paced world. Before undertaking anything, prepare carefully and consider the consequences. This advice from Seneca isn't about overthinking or anxiety. It's about developing the mental capacity to see around corners before you turn them. Think about the last time you made a decision you later regretted. Chances are you didn't take time to mentally prototype different outcomes before acting. Mental prototyping is exactly what it sounds like, creating mental models of potential futures before you act. It's like having a simulation lab in your mind where you can test different scenarios without having to experience the consequences in real life. Engineers build physical prototypes before constructing buildings. Designers create mock-ups before finalizing products. Your mind has this same capability, but most of us never develop it systematically. When you receive a frustrating message and feel the immediate urge to respond with equal frustration, that pause you take, that moment of considering what might happen if I send this, that's mental prototyping in its most basic form. You're running a quick simulation of potential outcomes before committing to action. Research from the University of Pennsylvania found that people who engage in this kind of prospective thinking show greater activation in brain networks associated with problem-solving and creativity. They literally see possibilities that others miss. This isn't some mystical ability. It's a practical skill you can develop with consistent practice. I witnessed this with Eleanor, a healthcare worker who consistently made better decisions than colleagues with far more formal training. Before implementing any procedure, she would quickly run through potential complications and have contingency plans ready. This wasn't paranoia, it was advanced intelligence in action. Her colleagues might have had more academic knowledge, but Eleanor's mental prototyping saved lives when unexpected complications arose. But wait, you might be thinking, isn't this just another form of anxiety or overthinking? That's a crucial distinction. Anxiety imagines negative futures and stops there, leaving you paralyzed with fear. Mental prototyping, on the other hand, systematically explores multiple potential outcomes, positive, negative, and neutral, and prepares appropriate responses for each. One leads to paralysis, the other to preparation. Let me share a simple framework you can use right now. The next time you face any significant decision, take 3 minutes to ask yourself 3 questions. First, what's the best possible outcome of this action? Second, what's the most likely outcome? Third, what's a negative outcome I should prepare for? By exploring these 3 scenarios, you engage neural networks associated with foresight and planning. More importantly, you avoid the twin traps that catch most people: blind optimism that ignores potential problems, or paralyzing pessimism that sees only worst-case scenarios. I recently faced a decision about whether to accept a new project with a tight deadline. Instead of responding immediately, I took 3 minutes to prototype different scenarios. Best case, the project goes smoothly and builds a valuable relationship. Most likely case, the project requires more time than estimated, but still completes successfully. Negative case. Unforeseen complications make the deadline impossible to meet. By mentally prototyping these scenarios, I identified specific questions to ask before accepting and prepared contingency plans for potential challenges. This 3-minute investment saved what could have been weeks of stress and potential relationship damage. You demonstrate this intelligence whenever you take a moment to consider what might happen next, instead of rushing into action. This capacity for foresight is far more valuable than the ability to memorize information, a skill that computers now handle perfectly well. In a world of increasing complexity and rapid change, those who can anticipate consequences have an extraordinary advantage. Marcus Aurelius practiced this when he wrote, "Every morning say to yourself, 'Today I will meet people who are meddling, ungrateful, aggressive, treacherous, malicious, and unsocial.'" This wasn't pessimism, it was mental prototyping. By anticipating difficult encounters, he prepared his mind to respond with wisdom rather than reaction. Pause this video right now and think about a decision you're currently facing. Take 30 seconds to mentally prototype 3 possible outcomes. Notice how this immediately elevates your thinking above most people's reactive approach. Did you feel the difference? That clarity you just experienced is a form of intelligence that most educational systems never develop. Traditional education rewards memorization and quick answers, but real-world success depends far more on this ability to anticipate consequences before they occur. But I don't have time to do this for every decision, you might be thinking. That's the beautiful thing about mental prototyping. The more you practice it, the faster and more automatic it becomes. What initially takes 3 minutes eventually happens in seconds. Your brain develops neural shortcuts based on pattern recognition, allowing you to prototype scenarios almost instantaneously. The paradox of mental prototyping is that while it might initially seem to slow you down, it ultimately helps you move much faster. Think about the last time you had to backtrack and fix a mistake. How much time did that cost compared to the few minutes it would have taken to think through potential outcomes beforehand? I recommend keeping what I call a prototype journal for 1 week. After each significant decision, briefly note what you anticipated and what actually happened. This creates a feedback loop that rapidly improves your mental prototyping ability, strengthening neural pathways associated with this form of intelligence. The Stoics understood something profound about human nature. We tend to focus on immediate gratification at the expense of long-term consequences. Seneca observed that the mind that is anxious about future things is miserable, but he wasn't advocating for ignoring the future. He was warning against emotional anxiety rather than rational foresight. Mental prototyping transforms how you navigate everyday situations. Imagine you're about to have a difficult conversation with someone. Most people either avoid these conversations entirely or enter them without preparation, letting emotions drive the interaction. But with mental prototyping, you can explore different approaches beforehand. If I say X, they might respond with Y. If I approach the topic this way, it could lead to defensiveness. If I frame the issue around our shared goals, it might create more openness. This isn't manipulation, it's communication intelligence. By anticipating different paths the conversation might take, you prepare yourself to respond thoughtfully rather than reactively. The same principle applies to email communication. How many times have you sent a message only to regret its tone or content later? Mental prototyping involves asking, how might different people interpret these words? What questions might arise? What misunderstandings could occur? These few moments of foresight can prevent hours of damage control later. Even in daily planning, this intelligence marker makes a tremendous difference. Most people create to-do lists without considering potential obstacles. Mental prototyping involves asking, what might prevent me from completing these tasks? Where might I encounter friction? What contingencies should I prepare for? This simple practice dramatically increases your probability of success. Social media provides another powerful application. Before posting content, those with developed mental prototyping ask, how might different audiences interpret this? What unintended impressions could this create? How might this appear 3 years from now? This foresight prevents the career-damaging social media mistakes that have become so common. The beauty of mental prototyping is that it's equally valuable for small daily decisions and major life choices. Whether you're deciding what to say in a meeting or contemplating a career change, the ability to mentally prototype different scenarios provides clarity that most people never achieve. Epictetus advised his students to rehearse how you might accommodate yourself to everything that happens. This practice isn't about predicting the future with perfect accuracy. It's about developing mental flexibility that allows you to navigate whatever actually occurs with greater wisdom. By day 3 of practicing mental prototyping, you might find it slows you down, and that's normal. But by day 7, you'll notice the process becoming faster and more automatic, revealing intelligence you didn't realize you possessed. By month 3, it becomes so integrated into your thinking that you'll wonder how you ever made decisions without it. I've seen this transformation in countless people who initially resisted the practice as too time-consuming. One business leader I worked with complained that he didn't have 3 minutes to prototype scenarios before making decisions. 6 months later, he credited this practice with saving his company from a disastrous partnership that would have cost millions. The red flags became obvious once he took time to mentally prototype how the relationship would likely evolve. Mental prototyping doesn't require special training or education, just the discipline to pause before acting. This is precisely why it's a marker of intelligence that transcends traditional measures like academic achievement or IQ scores. Some of the most educated people I know make terrible decisions because they lack this fundamental capacity for foresight. The neuroscience behind this is fascinating. When you engage in mental prototyping, you activate the prefrontal cortex, the brain region associated with executive function and higher-order thinking. With consistent practice, you strengthen neural pathways that enable faster and more sophisticated scenario planning. It's like developing a mental muscle that gets stronger with use. One practical way to strengthen this intelligence marker is through what I call decision postmortems. After a decision produces unexpected results, good or bad, take a moment to ask, what did I fail to anticipate? What assumptions proved incorrect? What can I learn for future prototyping? This reflection accelerates your development of this crucial intelligence marker. Mental prototyping also transforms how you respond to uncertainty. Most people either freeze in the face of ambiguity or rush to premature conclusions. Those who have developed this marker of Stoic intelligence can hold multiple potential scenarios in mind simultaneously, maintaining both preparation and flexibility. Remember, this isn't about becoming paralyzed by analysis. It's about developing the mental dexterity to see around corners and prepare for multiple possibilities. As Seneca said, the wise person thinks about difficulties before they arrive. This isn't anxiety or pessimism, it's practical wisdom. As you develop this intelligence marker, you'll notice something remarkable. Opportunities that others miss become visible to you. Because you're thinking several moves ahead while others react to what's directly in front of them, you'll identify possibilities they can't see. This is how ordinary people achieve extraordinary results, not through exceptional talent, but through exceptional foresight. But what happens when, despite the best mental prototyping, you face an unexpected obstacle? It's here that the third marker of Stoic intelligence becomes vital. Epictetus, who lived much of his life as a slave with a physical disability, developed a revolutionary approach to transforming obstacles into advantages. This form of intelligence doesn't just overcome problems, it transforms them into opportunities that otherwise would never exist. Having a roadmap for what might go wrong is certainly helpful, but what happens when your careful plans collapse anyway? When that project fails despite your best preparation, or when life throws you a curveball no amount of mental prototyping could have anticipated? It's in these moments that we discover the third marker of Stoic intelligence, adversity leverage, the ability to transform obstacles into advantages. This isn't about positive thinking or pretending problems don't exist. It's about intellectual flexibility of the highest order, seeing opportunity precisely where others see only disaster. And no one embodied this better than Epictetus, who taught that the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Consider Epictetus's circumstances. Born a slave, physically disabled from harsh treatment, he had every excuse to view life as an unfair burden. Yet he didn't just endure these obstacles. He used them as the very foundation for his philosophy. His limitation of physical freedom led him to discover something profound about internal freedom that has guided millions for 2,000 years. What Epictetus discovered wasn't just philosophical resilience. He identified a cognitive capacity that modern science now recognizes as exceptional. Research from the University of California found that people who can reframe obstacles as opportunities show greater cognitive flexibility and problem-solving ability than those who simply have high IQs. This isn't just about feeling better, it's about thinking better. I know what you're wondering. Isn't this just making lemonade from lemons? Not exactly. Making lemonade suggests accepting a downgrade, but making the best of it. Adversity leverage is more transformative. It's about emerging from challenges with advantages you couldn't have gained any other way. Let's make this practical. Each morning this week, identify one challenge you're currently facing and ask yourself 3 questions. First, what opportunities might be hidden within this obstacle? Second, how might this difficulty be training me for something important? Third, what advantage might I create because of this problem, not despite it? Now start with smaller challenges before applying this to major obstacles. The key is consistency. Even minor daily practice strengthens this form of intelligence. Consider the story of James, who lost his job during an economic downturn. While his equally qualified colleagues spent months submitting resumes and complaining about the unfair situation, James leveraged the adversity by creating a consultancy that specifically helped companies operate with fewer full-time employees. Within a year, he was earning more than his previous salary and helping others find work. The crucial distinction is that James didn't succeed despite losing his job. He succeeded because of it. The obstacle literally became the path to something better. This isn't rare either. History is filled with innovations born directly from obstacles. Post-it notes resulted from a failed super-strong adhesive. Pacemakers emerged from equipment designed to record heart rhythm. The obstacle became the way forward. When I first encountered this concept in Stoic philosophy, I thought it sounded like wishful thinking. But after applying it in my own life during a particularly difficult period, I was amazed at how it transformed not just my circumstances, but my entire approach to problem solving. I had lost a major client that provided 40% of my income. Initially, I saw only disaster. Bills wouldn't be paid, plans would be cancelled. But applying adversity leverage, I identified how this created time to develop new skills, forced me to diversify my client base, which ultimately proved more stable, and pushed me to create systems that made my business more efficient. Within 6 months, I was earning more than before, with a much more resilient business model. By day 5 of practicing adversity leverage, challenge yourself to find at least 3 potential advantages in every obstacle you encounter. This isn't forced positivity, it's intellectual flexibility that reveals options invisible to most people. Marcus Aurelius practiced this consistently. As Emperor of Rome, he faced constant challenges: wars, plagues, betrayals, personal loss. In his journal he wrote, "The mind adapts and converts to its own purposes the obstacle to our acting. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Notice his language. The mind adapts and converts. This isn't wishful thinking. It's active mental transformation. He's describing a cognitive process where obstacles become raw material for advantage. Let's apply this to everyday modern challenges. Imagine your flight is delayed by 3 hours. Most people respond with frustration, spending those hours complaining or scrolling mindlessly on their phones. Someone practicing adversity leverage might ask, "What can I do with these unexpected 3 hours that might actually benefit me? What conversations might I have? What thinking might I do that normal busy life doesn't allow?" Or consider a more significant challenge, a project failure at work. Most people either blame others or beat themselves up. Someone with developed adversity leverage asks, what skills can I develop through fixing this? What relationships might be strengthened through how I handle this recovery? What systems can I create to prevent similar problems that will benefit everything else I do? The biology of adversity provides a perfect analogy. Physical muscles grow through resistance. The obstacle, weight, becomes the way, strength. Similarly, our mental and practical capabilities grow through facing resistance. Without obstacles, we remain weak and undeveloped. A powerful exercise to develop this intelligence marker is what I call obstacle reframing. When facing any challenge, complete this sentence. This obstacle exists to fill in the blank with possibilities that empower rather than diminish you. This obstacle exists to teach me patience. This obstacle exists to help me develop new skills. This obstacle exists to connect me with others facing similar challenges. This isn't about denying difficulty or pretending everything is wonderful. It's about training your mind to automatically search for advantage within adversity rather than simply reacting to it. It's a trainable cognitive skill that distinguishes advanced thinkers from average ones. Seneca understood this deeply. Despite being one of Rome's wealthiest men, he was exiled, lost his fortune, and eventually faced a death sentence from Emperor Nero. Yet he wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." He wasn't merely consoling himself. He was applying advanced cognitive reframing that allowed him to write philosophical works during exile that have guided people for 2 millennia. You demonstrate this intelligence whenever you ask, how can I use this challenge to create something better? Instead of simply enduring difficulties. This ability to transform obstacles into stepping stones displays more intellectual sophistication than any standardized test could measure. One of the most powerful applications of adversity leverage is in social conflict. When someone criticizes or opposes you, the natural reaction is defensive resistance. But those who have developed this marker of Stoic intelligence ask, how might this perspective, even if delivered poorly, contain information I can use? How might this opposition sharpen my thinking or reveal blind spots? Epictetus advised, remember that when someone insults you, it's their opinion, not your reality. This creates the mental space to leverage even personal attacks as opportunities for growth rather than triggers for reaction. I want you to try something right now. Think of a current challenge you're facing, something that's been causing you stress or concern. For the next 60 seconds, brainstorm at least 3 ways this obstacle might actually be creating opportunities that wouldn't exist otherwise. Don't overthink it. Just let the possibilities emerge. Did you find 3? If so, you've just exercised the mental pathway associated with adversity leverage. If you struggled, that's completely normal. This cognitive skill takes practice, especially in a culture that trains us to see obstacles as purely negative. By the way, struggling to find advantages is itself an opportunity to develop this cognitive muscle. The resistance you feel is precisely what strengthens the neural pathways associated with this form of intelligence. Each time you push against your habitual thinking, you build capacity for more sophisticated cognition. Modern psychology confirms what the Stoics discovered through experience. Research on post-traumatic growth shows that many people don't just recover from difficulties. They develop new strengths precisely because of them. These aren't exceptional cases. They're examples of adversity leverage in action. As you develop this intelligence marker, you'll notice something remarkable. Problems that used to derail you for days now become sources of energy and creativity. This isn't because the problems are objectively smaller. It's because your cognitive capacity to leverage them has grown substantially. A fascinating study from Stanford University found that entrepreneurs who had previously failed were more likely to succeed in subsequent ventures compared to first-time entrepreneurs with no failure experience. The obstacle literally became the way to greater success, but only for those who developed the cognitive capacity to leverage that adversity rather than simply enduring it. By developing adversity leverage, you create an anti-fragile mindset, a term coined by philosopher Nassim Taleb to describe systems that actually get stronger when exposed to stresses, volatility, and disorder. Most people have fragile mindsets, easily broken by adversity. Some develop resilient mindsets that withstand challenges. But those with advanced adversity leverage develop anti-fragile thinking that actually strengthens through exposure to obstacles. The poet Rumi captured this perfectly. The wound is the place where the light enters you. This isn't spiritual metaphor, it's practical cognitive reality. The places where we've been wounded, challenged, or obstructed become entry points for new capabilities if we develop the intelligence to leverage them. As you practice adversity leverage this week, you'll likely notice resistance from your habitual thinking patterns. When facing problems, your mind has well-worn neural pathways of frustration, victimhood, or simple endurance. Creating new pathways of opportunity-seeking requires consistent practice and a willingness to think differently than those around you. Remember, this intelligence marker isn't just about individual obstacles. It's about developing a consistent cognitive approach that automatically seeks advantage in adversity. With enough practice, this becomes your default processing mode rather than something you have to consciously remember to do. But developing adversity leverage requires something else, something that many people lack entirely. No matter how good you become at seeing opportunities in obstacles, if you can't manage your emotional reactions, your brilliant insights will remain trapped behind a wall of feelings. This brings us to perhaps the most fundamental marker of Stoic intelligence: emotional sovereignty. Not the suppression of emotions, but a sophisticated ability to experience them without being ruled by them. Marcus Aurelius practiced this when he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This isn't emotional suppression. It's the sophisticated ability to experience emotions without being ruled by them. You've mastered the ability to transform obstacles into advantages, but have you ever noticed how emotions can still hijack even your best cognitive strategies? That sudden rush of anger when someone cuts you off in traffic, the spiral of anxiety before an important presentation, the flush of embarrassment when you make a mistake in front of others. In these moments, it doesn't matter how intellectually brilliant you are if your emotions are running the show. This brings us to perhaps the most fundamental marker of Stoic intelligence: emotional sovereignty. Not the suppression of emotions, but a sophisticated ability to experience them without being ruled by them. Marcus Aurelius practiced this when he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Let's be clear about what emotional sovereignty is not. It's not about becoming cold or unfeeling. The Stoics never advocated for suppressing emotions. That's a common misunderstanding. Rather, they recognize something profound. Emotions themselves aren't the problem. It's being controlled by them that limits our intelligence. Think about the last time a strong emotion hijacked your thinking. Maybe it was anger during an argument that made you say something you later regretted, or anxiety that prevented you from taking a risk that could have led to growth, or even excitement that caused you to make an impulsive purchase you couldn't afford. In each case, the emotion itself wasn't inherently bad, but allowing it to drive your behavior limited your choices. Neuroscience has caught up to what the Stoics knew centuries ago. Research from the Center for Healthy Minds shows that people with emotional regulation skills demonstrate greater prefrontal cortex activity, the exact brain region associated with advanced decision-making that separates truly intelligent minds from merely educated ones. When emotions flood our system, they can temporarily shut down access to our prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain responsible for planning, decision-making, and rational thought. This is why we often make poor decisions when emotionally triggered. Emotional sovereignty doesn't prevent you from feeling emotions. It maintains your access to your higher cognitive functions even while experiencing them. I observed this intelligence marker in action with Sarah, a team leader who remained composed during a project crisis that sent her colleagues into panic. While everyone else was reacting emotionally, Sarah acknowledged her concerns but maintained clarity. She later told me, "Of course I felt worried, but I realized my worry wasn't adding any useful information to the situation." This emotional sovereignty allowed her to see solutions invisible to others whose thinking was clouded by fear and frustration. The practical question is, how do we develop this ability? The Stoics offered a surprisingly simple technique that modern neuroscience now validates: the 90-second rule. Research shows that the physiological response to emotions, the chemical cascade that creates bodily sensations, naturally subsides after about 90 seconds if we don't feed it with thoughts that keep it going. Here's how to implement this practice in your daily life. 3 times each day, preferably when experiencing strong emotions, try this simple protocol. First, name the emotion specifically. Don't just say, "I'm upset." Are you disappointed, frustrated, anxious? Naming emotions with precision activates your prefrontal cortex, beginning the process of regaining sovereignty. Second, locate where you feel it in your body. Is there tightness in your chest? A knot in your stomach? Tension in your shoulders? This body awareness pulls you out of abstract rumination and into concrete experience. Third, simply breathe and observe the sensation for 90 seconds without acting on it. Don't try to change it or make it go away. Just watch it with curiosity, like a scientist studying an interesting phenomenon. Finally, only after completing these steps, decide how to respond. This practice might seem too simple to be effective. A client once told me exactly that. But 2 weeks later, she called to share how it had completely transformed a high-stakes negotiation. Instead of reacting defensively to aggressive tactics, she observed her emotions, waited 90 seconds, and responded strategically, securing terms her counterpart later admitted he never expected to concede. By day 3 of practicing this technique, you'll likely notice the intensity of emotional reactions beginning to decrease. By day 7, you'll experience moments of clarity during emotional situations that previously would have hijacked your thinking. This isn't because you're feeling less. It's because you're developing the ability to feel fully while maintaining cognitive access to your wisest self. Epictetus captured this perfectly when he said, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." He recognized that emotions happen to us. They arise automatically based on our perceptions. What's in our power is how we respond to them. Imagine you're driving and someone cuts you off in traffic. The emotion of anger arises automatically. That's not in your control. But what happens next is within your power. Most people immediately feed that initial anger with thoughts like, "What an inconsiderate jerk. People drive like maniacs these days." These thoughts extend the emotional reaction far beyond the initial 90-second physiological response. Someone practicing emotional sovereignty would experience the initial anger, but observe it rather than amplify it. They might think, "I notice I'm feeling angry. There's tension in my shoulders and heat in my face. Interesting how strongly my body reacts to being cut off." This observational stance maintains access to the prefrontal cortex, allowing for better decisions about how to respond. An important distinction in developing emotional sovereignty is the language we use with ourselves. Notice the difference between "I am angry" and "I am noticing feelings of anger." The first identification fully merges you with the emotion. The second creates a small but crucial space between you and the experience. This isn't semantic wordplay. It reflects a fundamental shift in your relationship with emotional states. Try this right now. Think of a situation that's currently causing you some emotional discomfort. First, notice how it feels to think, "I am emotion." Then shift to, "I am experiencing sensations of emotion." Feel the difference? That subtle shift in language creates space for your higher intelligence to operate even while experiencing strong feelings. This practice transforms how you navigate conflicts. When someone criticizes you, for example, emotional reactivity might drive you to defend, attack, or withdraw. But with emotional sovereignty, you can feel the initial sting while maintaining access to your wisdom about how best to respond. You might choose to ask clarifying questions, express appreciation for feedback, or calmly disagree. Options that are rarely available to someone in the grip of emotional reaction. Digital communication provides endless opportunities to practice this skill. That email that makes your blood boil. That social media comment that triggers defensiveness. That text message that sparks anxiety. Each of these moments is not just a challenge, but an opportunity to develop greater emotional sovereignty. A helpful image comes from Stoic philosopher Epictetus, who suggested we view our emotions like weather patterns. It's like a storm arising. The weather and winds are not in your control, but how you face them is. Just as we wouldn't scold ourselves for noticing it's raining, we don't need to judge ourselves for experiencing emotions. The intelligence lies in how we relate to them. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily, writing in his journal, "When jarred unavoidably by circumstances, revert at once to yourself, and don't lose the rhythm more than you can help. You'll have a better grasp of harmony if you keep going back to it." He recognized that emotional sovereignty isn't about never being jarred, but about how quickly we can return to our center. The development of emotional sovereignty progresses through distinct stages. As beginners, we notice emotions after they've already hijacked our thinking. With practice, we become aware of emotions as they arise, creating space to choose our response. At advanced levels, we maintain awareness during emotional experiences, neither suppressing them nor being controlled by them. A particularly valuable application of this intelligence marker is in how we handle uncertainty. When facing unknown outcomes, many people experience anxiety that drives poor decision-making, either rushing to premature conclusions or avoiding decisions altogether. Emotional sovereignty allows you to feel the discomfort of uncertainty while maintaining the cognitive clarity to navigate it wisely. Seneca addressed this directly. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. He recognized that emotional suffering often comes not from present circumstances, but from projections about the future. By developing sovereignty over these emotional projections, we free our intelligence to address actual challenges rather than imagined ones. You display this intelligence whenever you experience strong emotions without letting them dictate your actions. This ability to maintain mental clarity under pressure is more valuable than raw processing power that collapses during emotional turbulence. Consider the difference between intellectual knowledge and embodied wisdom. Many highly educated people can explain emotional regulation perfectly, yet fall apart when actually triggered. Conversely, some with little formal education demonstrate remarkable emotional sovereignty in challenging situations. This distinction highlights why conventional measures of intelligence often miss this crucial capacity. To deepen your practice of emotional sovereignty, I recommend what I call emotional meteorology, tracking your emotional weather patterns without judgment. For 1 week, set 3 daily alarms as reminders to notice your emotional state. Simply observe what you're feeling, where you feel it in your body, and what thoughts are accompanying the emotion. This awareness practice strengthens neural pathways associated with emotional intelligence. Remember, the goal isn't to control or eliminate emotions, but to experience them without being controlled by them. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion. There is never any need to get worked up about things you can't control." This isn't advocating for emotional numbness, but for the freedom that comes from choosing how to engage with your emotional experience. By strengthening your emotional sovereignty, you'll notice tangible benefits across all areas of life. Relationships improve as you respond rather than react. Decision-making becomes clearer as emotions inform rather than overwhelm your thinking. Creativity flourishes as you can tolerate the uncertainty inherent in the creative process. But there's something even more fundamental that emotional sovereignty makes possible. When you're not constantly reactive to emotional triggers, you create space to consider what truly matters, not just what feels urgent in the moment. This brings us to the fifth marker of Stoic intelligence: value discernment. The ability to distinguish between what's genuinely important and what merely appears important. Seneca expressed this perfectly. "It is not the man who has too little who is poor, but the one who hankers after more." This capacity to see through social conditioning and identify true value requires sophisticated thinking that goes beyond conventional measures of intelligence. In our next section, we'll explore how to develop this crucial ability to discern what genuinely matters from what merely demands your attention. Emotional mastery opens up a crucial space in your life, the ability to look beyond immediate reactions and consider what truly matters. But in a world constantly competing for your attention, how do you distinguish between what's genuinely important and what merely seems urgent? This question brings us to our fifth marker of Stoic intelligence: value discernment. The ability to see through social conditioning and identify what truly matters. Seneca expressed this perfectly when he wrote, "It is not the man who has too little who is poor, but the one who hankers after more." This insight cuts straight to the heart of our modern predicament. We're surrounded by messages telling us what should matter: career advancement, social status, material possessions, digital validation. Yet many people who achieve these things still feel empty and unfulfilled. Value discernment isn't just another self-help concept. It's a sophisticated form of intelligence that allows you to cut through noise and focus your limited time and energy on what genuinely contributes to a well-lived life. Research from the field of positive psychology confirms that people who can accurately identify what genuinely contributes to well-being make better life decisions than those who simply pursue culturally prescribed goals. I witnessed this intelligence marker in David, who turned down a prestigious, high-paying position to accept a role that better aligned with his values and skills. His colleagues thought he was making a terrible mistake, but 5 years later, David had not only advanced further in his career, but also maintained his health and relationships, areas his former colleagues had sacrificed in pursuit of status. David wasn't making a sacrifice. He was demonstrating advanced value discernment. The modern world presents a particularly difficult environment for developing this form of intelligence. We face more choices than any humans in history, alongside unprecedented levels of social comparison through digital media. Every day, thousands of messages compete for your attention, each suggesting what should matter to you. Without developed value discernment, you're left navigating this complexity using values you've absorbed rather than consciously chosen. This week, examine the choices you make through the lens of value alignment rather than external validation. The daily practice involves asking 3 questions before making decisions. First, is this choice aligned with my authentic values or merely responding to external expectations? Second, will this matter 1 year from now, 5 years from now? Third, if no one else ever knew about this decision, would I still make the same choice? Apply this to both small daily decisions and larger life choices. By day 7, you'll notice a shift in how you evaluate options, revealing an intelligence that cuts through social conditioning to identify what truly matters. I recommend creating a values inventory this week. List the 5 to 7 principles that genuinely matter to you, not what you think should matter. Reference this inventory when making decisions to strengthen your value discernment muscle. This isn't about creating a rigid set of rules, but about developing clarity that guides wiser choices. The Stoics were particularly adept at value discernment. Marcus Aurelius, despite being Emperor of Rome, wrote in his private journal, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." This wasn't philosophical abstraction. It was practical wisdom from a man who had access to every luxury, yet recognized that true value lay elsewhere. Think about a recent purchase you made. What was the underlying value you were pursuing? Was it comfort, status, security, novelty? Now consider whether that purchase actually delivered on that value. This simple reflection develops the mental muscle of discernment that most people never exercise. Epictetus taught his students to divide things into 2 categories: things within our control and things outside our control. This simple distinction is a powerful tool for value discernment. When you focus your energy on what you can control, your judgments, actions, and values, you automatically align with what genuinely matters. When you fixate on what you can't control, others' opinions, external events, inevitable change, you sacrifice what's valuable for what's merely visible. Try this exercise right now. Think of something causing you stress. Is it within your control or outside your control? If it's within your control, what action would align with your values? If it's outside your control, how might redirecting that energy toward what you can influence serve you better? This simple Stoic practice immediately clarifies what deserves your attention. Seneca offered a profound insight when he observed that people are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they are most wasteful of the one thing in which it is right to be stingy. This recognition that time is our most precious and limited resource forms the foundation of value discernment. How you allocate your hours is the ultimate expression of what you truly value, regardless of what you claim to value. The deathbed perspective is a powerful tool for developing this intelligence marker. Imagine yourself at the end of life, looking back. What decisions will you be glad you made? What will you regret? This isn't morbid, it's clarifying. As Seneca advised, let all your activity be directed to some goal. The deathbed perspective immediately reveals which goals actually matter. One of the most profound applications of value discernment is in career decisions. Many people chase professional paths that offer status or financial reward without considering alignment with their authentic values. I've worked with numerous individuals who achieved success by conventional standards, yet felt profoundly empty because their work violated their core values rather than expressing them. The paradox of value discernment is that it often leads to decisions that initially confuse others, but eventually prove wise. When you choose based on authentic values rather than social conditioning, you may temporarily seem to be moving backward while actually advancing toward more meaningful success. Social media provides a perfect laboratory for practicing value discernment. Before engaging with any content, ask yourself, is this aligned with what truly matters to me, or is it merely capturing my attention? This simple question can transform your relationship with digital technology from passive consumption to active choice. One client dramatically improved his life by conducting what I call a value audit of his social media feeds. He reviewed each account he followed and asked whether it aligned with his authentic values or merely triggered emotional reactions. After unfollowing accounts that didn't serve his deeper values, He reported not just better digital habits, but greater clarity in all areas of life. You demonstrate this intelligence whenever you make decisions based on your authentic values rather than external validation. This ability to discern what truly matters shows more intellectual sophistication than accumulating credentials that lead nowhere meaningful. The Stoics recognized that value discernment becomes particularly important in how we relate to material possessions. Seneca, despite being one of Rome's wealthiest men, practiced regular periods of voluntary simplicity to maintain his discernment. He wrote, "Set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, 'Is this the condition that I feared?'" This practice, temporarily living with less, resets our perception of what we actually need versus what we merely want. It's not about asceticism for its own sake, but about maintaining the intelligence to distinguish between necessity and luxury, a distinction our consumer culture deliberately blurs. Try this experiment. For 24 hours, use only what you genuinely need rather than what you habitually consume. Notice how this temporary limitation clarifies the difference between authentic needs and conditioned wants. This clarity is value discernment in action. The concept of enough is central to this marker of Stoic intelligence. Without developed value discernment, you remain vulnerable to what Seneca called the greatest of all curses, never being satisfied regardless of what you acquire or achieve. The intelligence to recognize enough creates a freedom that endless acquisition never can. Marcus Aurelius practiced this when he wrote, "Do not indulge in dreams of having what you have not, but reckon up the chief of the blessings you do possess, and then thankfully remember how you would crave for them if they were not yours." This mental practice, appreciating what you already have rather than fixating on what you lack, builds the cognitive pathway of sufficiency that underpins value discernment. One of the most powerful applications of this intelligence marker is in relationship decisions. Without value discernment, people often choose partners based on superficial criteria or social expectations rather than alignment with deeper values. The result is relationships that look successful from the outside while feeling empty or conflicted from within. The values conversation is something I recommend to every couple I work with. Each partner independently identifies their 5 core values. Then they discuss areas of alignment and potential conflict. This simple exercise reveals compatibility at a deeper level than typical relationship discussions reach, allowing for more intelligent decisions about commitment. As you strengthen your value discernment this week, you'll likely notice friction with conventional thinking. Our culture rewards quick decisions based on immediate benefits or social validation. The intelligence to pause and evaluate choices against deeper values often appears inefficient in the short term, while proving profoundly efficient in the long term. The ultimate test of value discernment is consistency between your stated values and your actual choices. Many people claim to value health while consistently making choices that undermine it, or claim to value relationships while continuously prioritizing work over connection. This gap between professed values and lived choices reveals undeveloped value discernment. A practical technique for closing this gap is what I call value tracking. For 1 week, record each significant decision and note which value it served. This simple awareness practice quickly reveals whether your choices align with what you claim is important, developing the intelligence to notice and close these gaps. By developing value discernment, you create an internal compass that guides decisions large and small. Rather than being swayed by whatever seems important in the moment, whatever triggers the strongest emotion or carries the loudest social validation, you navigate by what genuinely matters according to your deepest values. This form of intelligence becomes increasingly valuable in a world of endless options and constant distraction. While others exhaust themselves chasing whatever appears significant at the moment, you direct your limited time and energy toward what actually contributes to a well-lived life. But even with perfect value discernment, there's one more form of intelligence that separates truly exceptional thinkers from the merely disciplined. It's the ability to see connections between seemingly unrelated ideas, what I call interconnected thinking. Marcus Aurelius observed, "All things are implicated with one another, and the bond is holy." This ability to recognize patterns and connections across domains is what Steve Jobs called connecting the dots, a form of intelligence that creates innovations others can't imagine. The ability to discern what truly matters is powerful, but there's something even more transformative waiting for you. A way of thinking that can solve problems others can't even see. Have you ever had that aha moment when you suddenly connected two completely unrelated ideas and discovered a solution no one else could see? That spark of insight, that brilliant connection that seems to come from nowhere, that's what we're exploring now. Marcus Aurelius captured this perfectly when he wrote, "All things are implicated with one another, and the bond is holy." This wasn't mystical philosophy. It was a practical recognition that the world isn't divided into neat categories, but consists of interconnected systems that influence each other in surprising ways. The sixth, and perhaps most powerful Stoic intelligence marker, is what I call interconnected thinking. The ability to see relationships between seemingly unrelated concepts. This isn't just creative thinking. It's a sophisticated cognitive skill that neurologists now recognize as central to innovation and problem solving. Steve Jobs famously said, "You can only connect the dots looking backward." What he meant was that breakthrough innovations often come from connecting ideas across different domains, combining insights from calligraphy with computer design, for instance. This is interconnected thinking in action, and it's something you can systematically develop. Cognitive science refers to this as analogical thinking, and research shows it's more predictive of creative problem-solving ability than traditional IQ measures. When you can see patterns across different domains, you access solutions invisible to linear thinkers. I saw this intelligence in action with a marketing professional who consistently created breakthrough campaigns by connecting concepts from entirely different industries. While her colleagues recycled the same tired approaches, she would apply principles from biology, architecture, or literature to marketing challenges, creating solutions that seemed like magic to those with more linear thinking patterns. One of her most successful campaigns came when she noticed similarities between how trees communicate through underground fungal networks and how information spreads through social groups. This insight from nature led to a completely new approach to word-of-mouth marketing that outperformed traditional methods by over 300%. The fascinating thing about interconnected thinking is that it's not about being more knowledgeable. It's about seeing relationships between what you already know. The Stoics practiced this by studying diverse subjects rather than specializing narrowly, allowing insights from one area to illuminate challenges in another. Seneca advised, "We should hunt out the helpful pieces of teaching and the spirited and noble-minded sayings which are capable of immediate practical application." He wasn't collecting knowledge for its own sake, but looking for patterns and principles that applied across different contexts. You can develop this intelligence through a practice I call concept bridging. Here's how it works. First, choose a challenge or problem you're currently facing. Second, select something completely unrelated, a natural process, an object in your room, a hobby. Third, force connections between them by asking, how is this problem like that unrelated thing? Fourth, extract principles or insights from these forced connections. This exercise feels awkward at first. I remember feeling silly doing it. But neuroscience shows that forcing these unlikely connections strengthens neural pathways associated with creative problem solving. By week's end, you'll begin seeing connections that others miss entirely. Let's try a quick example together. Think of a current challenge you're facing. Maybe a difficult conversation you need to have, a project that's stalled, or a decision you're struggling with. Got it? Now, look around your environment and select a random object. It could be anything: a plant, a coffee mug, a window. Now, take 60 seconds to find connections between your challenge and this unrelated object. How is your problem like this object? What principles might transfer from one to the other? Don't overthink it. Just let your mind play with the connections. Did you try it? If so, you just activated neural pathways associated with interconnected thinking. Even if the connections seemed forced or silly, you were developing the cognitive flexibility that underlies this form of intelligence. For example, if your challenge is improving team communication and you selected a houseplant, you might notice that plants need consistent care rather than occasional intense attention. Perhaps your team needs regular check-ins rather than just quarterly reviews. Or you might observe that plants turn toward light sources. Perhaps your team members need clearer vision of what success looks like to align their efforts. These connections might seem simple, but they often lead to insights that purely logical analysis misses. The power comes from breaking out of conventional thinking patterns to see fresh angles on familiar problems. Epictetus understood this when he taught his students to observe patterns in nature and apply them to human challenges. He noted how trees bend with strong winds rather than resisting rigidly, a natural principle that applies equally well to handling adversity in life. This wasn't just a nice metaphor, but a practical application of interconnected thinking. The difference between linear thinking and interconnected thinking becomes especially important in our modern world. Linear thinking excels at optimizing existing processes or solving well-defined problems. But most of today's most valuable challenges require seeing connections across domains. Healthcare innovations that combine medical knowledge with behavioral psychology, climate solutions that integrate engineering with economic incentives, or educational approaches that blend cognitive science with digital technology. You display this intelligence whenever you notice patterns across different areas of life or bring insights from one field into another. This capacity for interconnected thinking is what drives innovation and breakthrough solutions that linear intelligence simply cannot produce. A particularly powerful version of this practice is what I call the three-domain challenge. When facing a difficult problem, deliberately seek insights from three completely different domains. For instance, if you're redesigning a customer experience, you might look for principles from architecture, how spaces guide movement, ecology, how systems adapt to change, and storytelling, how narratives create emotional engagement. By forcing these cross-domain connections, you create cognitive friction that often leads to breakthrough insights. This isn't about random creativity. It's about systematic innovation through deliberate pattern recognition across boundaries. Leonardo da Vinci exemplified this approach centuries ago. He didn't see himself as separately studying art, anatomy, engineering, and botany. He saw interconnected patterns across all these domains. His innovations came precisely from transferring principles between fields that others saw as entirely separate. You can practice this daily through what I call idea cross-pollination. Spend 15 minutes reading or learning about something completely outside your usual interests or expertise. Then explicitly ask, how might principles from this domain apply to challenges in my work or life? This regular practice strengthens the neural pathways associated with interconnected thinking. When I first started doing this, I felt like I was wasting time. Reading about beekeeping seemed irrelevant to my work challenges. But then I realized how bee colony communication, offered insights into information flow in organizations and how the structure of hives suggested principles for distributed leadership. These connections weren't obvious until I deliberately looked for them. Try this exercise now. Think of a personal or professional role you have: parent, manager, creative, problem solver. Now consider how principles from weather systems might apply to that role. For instance, how might understanding how pressure systems create weather patterns help you understand tensions in relationships? How might the concept of climate versus weather, long-term patterns versus daily fluctuations, apply to your personal development? Take 30 seconds to explore these connections right now. I'll wait. Did you find any useful insights? If not, that's perfectly normal. Interconnected thinking is a muscle that develops with practice. The more you deliberately look for cross-domain patterns, the more naturally your brain begins to generate them. Stoic philosophy itself represents interconnected thinking in action. The Stoics didn't separate ethics, physics, and logic into disconnected domains as many modern academic fields do. They saw these as interrelated aspects of a unified approach to understanding reality and living wisely within it. Marcus Aurelius demonstrated this when he wrote, "Constantly regard the universe as one living being, having one substance and one soul." This wasn't mysticism, but a practical recognition that understanding comes from seeing connections rather than isolated parts. The modern world increasingly rewards this form of intelligence while punishing its absence. Think about artificial intelligence. It excels at linear processing, but struggles with the kind of analogical thinking and cross-domain pattern recognition that defines human creativity. As automation handles more routine cognitive tasks, interconnected thinking becomes an increasingly valuable human capability. I've seen this transformation in numerous professionals who initially struggled with complex problems until they developed this intelligence marker. One software developer was stuck trying to improve an algorithm through traditional optimization techniques. After practicing interconnected thinking, he realized that principles from forest ecology, specifically how different species occupied different niches, offered a completely new approach to the problem. The resulting solution was so innovative that it was eventually patented. What's fascinating is that the knowledge needed for this breakthrough was already in his mind. He hadn't learned new facts about forests or algorithms. He had developed the cognitive ability to see connections between domains he previously considered separate. This brings us to a powerful application technique I call metaphor mapping. When facing a complex challenge, deliberately select a metaphor from a different domain and explore it fully. If you're restructuring a team, you might use a garden metaphor, considering which roles are perennials providing stability, which are annuals bringing fresh energy, and how the soil of company culture supports different types of growth. By thoroughly exploring the metaphor, you often discover insights that analytical thinking misses entirely. This isn't about forcing a metaphor to fit. It's about using it as a lens to see patterns you might otherwise overlook. The beauty of interconnected thinking is that it becomes self-reinforcing. The more connections you make, the more your brain naturally seeks and finds additional patterns. What starts as a deliberate practice gradually becomes a default cognitive mode. You begin seeing relationships that others miss without consciously trying. Epictetus advised his students to make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. Interconnected thinking is precisely about making the best use of the knowledge and experience already in your power. Finding new value in what you already know by seeing connections you previously missed. Now that we've explored all 6 markers of Stoic intelligence, it's time to develop a practical program to strengthen each one. This isn't about becoming someone you're not. It's about recognizing and developing the intelligence you already possess. Let's begin with a structured 6-week transformation, starting with cognitive separation. For the next 7 days, practice this simple exercise. When facing any challenging situation, pause and explicitly separate facts from interpretations by writing them in 2 columns. This single practice, done consistently, can begin to transform your entire relationship with your mind. Understanding the 6 markers of Stoic intelligence is powerful, but knowledge without implementation rarely leads to transformation. That's why we need a practical system to integrate these concepts into our daily lives. Imagine having a structured approach that systematically strengthens each of these intellectual capabilities, not through abstract theory, but through simple daily practices that create lasting neural change. Let me share what I call the Stoic Transformation Program, a 6-week system designed to develop these intelligence markers one by one. We'll start with the first 2 weeks, focusing on the foundational practices of cognitive separation and mental prototyping. These 2 capabilities create the mental infrastructure necessary for all other forms of Stoic intelligence. Week 1 is dedicated entirely to cultivating cognitive separation, that crucial ability to distinguish between objective facts and your subjective interpretations. For the next 7 days, I want you to practice this simple exercise. When facing any challenging situation, pause and explicitly separate facts from interpretations by writing them in 2 columns. In the left column, write only observable facts that anyone would agree with, things a camera would record. In the right column, write your interpretations, judgments, or assumptions about those facts. This physical act of separation makes concrete what otherwise remains mixed together in your mind. For example, let's say your proposal wasn't selected in a meeting. The fact column might simply state, "My proposal wasn't chosen by the team." The interpretation column might include thoughts like, "My idea wasn't good enough," or "No one values my input," or "I'll never advance in this organization." Do this exercise at least once daily, especially in situations that trigger strong emotions. I recommend keeping a small notebook specifically for this purpose. The physical act of writing creates a stronger neural impression than merely thinking about the distinction. A client of mine, a healthcare professional, practiced this during a particularly difficult week with a challenging patient. On day 1, she found it awkward to separate what happened from her thoughts about what happened. By day 3, she noticed herself automatically making the distinction in real time during stressful interactions. By day 7, she reported significantly less emotional reactivity and greater clarity in her decision-making. Many people find this exercise uncomfortable at first. I certainly did when I began practicing it. We're so accustomed to treating our interpretations as facts that separating them feels strange, even threatening. Your mind might resist with thoughts like, "But my interpretations are reality," or "This is just semantic wordplay." Push through this discomfort. By the end of the week, you'll begin experiencing moments of clarity that reveal just how intelligent your natural thinking can be when freed from interpretive distortions. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The object of life is not to be on the side of the majority, but to escape finding oneself in the ranks of the insane." The insanity he refers to is precisely this confusion of interpretation with reality. Try this right now. Think of something that frustrated you today. Now, separate the facts from your interpretations, what actually happened versus what story you told yourself about what happened. Take 15 seconds to do this mental separation. Did you notice how creating that space between event and interpretation immediately reduces emotional charge and increases your response options? That's cognitive separation in action, not suppressing your interpretations, but recognizing them for what they are. For maximum benefit during this first week, I recommend practicing this separation in 3 different contexts: professional challenges, relationship tensions, and self-judgment. This variety helps generalize the skill across different domains of life rather than keeping it isolated to one area. By day 7, you'll begin noticing the separation happening automatically in your mind, a clear sign of your intelligence activating. You'll catch yourself thinking, "That's just my interpretation," without having to deliberately create the distinction. This automaticity is the goal, making cognitive separation your default processing mode rather than something you have to remember to do. As we move into week 2, we'll build on this foundation by developing mental prototyping, the ability to anticipate potential outcomes before acting. This week's practice involves training your mind to run sophisticated scenarios rather than simply reacting to immediate circumstances. Before making any significant decision this week, take 3 minutes to mentally prototype potential outcomes. Ask yourself 3 essential questions. First, what's the best possible outcome of this action? Second, what's the most likely outcome? Third, what's a negative outcome I should prepare for? Apply this to everyday decisions, not just major ones. Before sending an important email, making a request, or having a difficult conversation, run this 3-minute mental prototype. This isn't about overthinking. It's about developing the mental habit of considering consequences before they arrive. Seneca practiced this regularly, writing, "The wise person thinks about difficulties before they arrive." He wasn't suggesting anxiety about the future, but rather practical foresight that prepares for multiple possibilities. I recommend keeping what I call a prototype journal this week. After each decision where you applied this technique, briefly note what you anticipated and what actually happened. This creates a feedback loop that rapidly improves your mental prototyping ability, strengthening neural pathways associated with this form of intelligence. For example, before a negotiation, you might prototype, "Best case, they accept my first offer. Most likely case, some back and forth before reaching middle ground. Negative case, they reject the proposal entirely and I need an alternative approach." After the interaction, record what actually happened compared to your prototypes. This comparison accelerates your learning curve dramatically. By day 3, you might find this process slows you down, and that's normal. Most of us are conditioned for immediate action rather than thoughtful consideration. But by day 7, you'll notice the process becoming faster and more automatic, revealing intelligence you didn't realize you possessed. What's fascinating is how these first 2 practices work together. Cognitive separation creates the mental space needed for effective mental prototyping. Without separating facts from interpretations, your scenario planning becomes contaminated by emotional reactions and cognitive distortions. A business leader I worked with initially dismissed these practices as too basic for someone at his level. 6 weeks later, he credited them with helping him navigate a complex merger that required extraordinary clarity. "I used to think I was making decisions based on facts," he told me, "but I was actually responding to my interpretations and fears without realizing it." The transformation during these first 2 weeks isn't just about developing isolated skills. It's about fundamentally changing your relationship with your own mind. You begin to see your thoughts as tools rather than truths, as options rather than commands. This metacognitive shift, the ability to think about your thinking, is what Epictetus meant when he said, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." During these 2 weeks, you'll likely encounter resistance from both internal and external sources. Internally, habitual thought patterns will fight to maintain their dominance. Externally, people accustomed to your reactive patterns may find your new thoughtfulness unsettling. Both forms of resistance are actually signs of progress, evidence that real change is occurring. A particularly valuable application of these 2 practices comes in digital communication. Before responding to any triggering message, Apply cognitive separation to distinguish between what was actually said and your interpretation of its meaning or intent. Then use mental prototyping to consider multiple ways your response might be received. This combination dramatically improves communication quality while reducing unnecessary conflict. Epictetus advised his students, "First say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do." These first 2 weeks are about becoming someone who sees reality clearly, cognitive separation, and anticipates consequences wisely, mental prototyping. The doing flows naturally from this transformed being. By the end of these 2 weeks, you'll likely notice several tangible changes. First, emotional reactions will become less intense and shorter in duration, as you automatically separate facts from interpretations. Second, decision-making will feel clearer as you habitually consider multiple outcomes rather than fixating on fears or hopes. Third, you'll experience greater peace of mind as you stop treating your interpretations as unquestionable reality. Remember that these practices aren't about achieving perfection, but about consistent improvement. Even the Stoic masters describe themselves as making progress, rather than having arrived at some final state of wisdom. Each time you separate fact from interpretation or prototype potential outcomes, you strengthen neural pathways associated with these forms of intelligence. Some days will be easier than others. On particularly stressful days, you might find yourself forgetting these practices entirely and reverting to old patterns. When this happens, simply notice it without judgment and return to the practices. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When jarred unavoidably by circumstances, revert at once to yourself and don't lose the rhythm more than you can help." As we conclude our exploration of these first 2 weeks, I encourage you to commit fully to these foundational practices. They might seem simple, even obvious, when described, but their consistent application creates profound changes in how you experience and respond to life's challenges. Make a specific commitment right now about when and where you'll practice cognitive separation tomorrow. Will it be during your morning commute? In your first meeting? When reading news or social media? Establishing a specific implementation intention dramatically increases the likelihood that you'll follow through. With these foundations of cognitive separation and mental prototyping established, we're ready to advance to the next 2 weeks of our transformation. In weeks 3 and 4, we'll develop the skills of adversity leverage and emotional sovereignty, capabilities that not only improve our response to challenges, but completely transform our relationship with obstacles and difficult emotions. The practice that we'll begin tomorrow can literally transform your worst current problem into your greatest opportunity. Now that you've established the mental foundations of cognitive separation and mental prototyping, you're ready to transform how you handle life's inevitable challenges. Over the next 2 weeks, we'll develop 2 capabilities that don't just help you endure difficulties, but actually use them as catalysts for growth. Imagine facing your greatest challenge with not just resilience, but with the ability to transform it into your greatest advantage. Week 3 focuses entirely on mastering adversity leverage, that remarkable ability to transform obstacles into opportunities. Each morning this week, I want you to identify one challenge you're currently facing and ask yourself 3 specific questions that the Stoics used to reframe difficulties. First, what opportunities might be hidden within this obstacle? This question immediately shifts your focus from problem to possibility. Second, how might this difficulty be training me for something important? The Stoics viewed obstacles as training grounds, not punishments. Third, what advantage might I create because of this problem, not despite it? This subtle distinction transforms your relationship with challenges entirely. Start with smaller challenges before tackling your biggest problems. Maybe begin with a delayed commute, a technology glitch, or a minor disagreement. The key is consistency. Even applying this practice to minor daily irritations strengthens the neural pathways associated with this form of intelligence. I remember when I first encountered this concept in Stoic philosophy, I honestly thought it sounded like wishful thinking. But after applying it during a particularly difficult period when I lost a significant client that provided 40% of my income, I was amazed at the transformation. Initially, I saw only disaster, how bills wouldn't be paid, plans would be cancelled. But applying adversity leverage, I identified how this created time to develop new skills, forced me to diversify my client base, which ultimately proved more stable, and pushed me to create systems that made my business more efficient. Within 6 months, I was earning more than before, with a much more resilient business model. The obstacle literally became the way forward, exactly as Marcus Aurelius described when he wrote, "The mind adapts and converts to its own purposes the obstacle to our acting. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." By day 5 of this week's practice, I want you to challenge yourself further by finding at least 3 potential advantages in every obstacle you encounter. This isn't forced positivity. It's intellectual flexibility that reveals options invisible to most people. Consider the story of someone who lost their job during an economic downturn. While equally qualified colleagues spent months submitting resumes and complaining about the unfair situation, this person leveraged the adversity by creating a consultancy that specifically helped companies operate with fewer full-time employees. Within a year, they were earning more than their previous salary and helping others find work. The crucial distinction was that they didn't succeed despite losing their job. They succeeded because of it. The obstacle literally became the path to something better. This pattern repeats throughout history. Countless innovations emerged directly from obstacles. Post-it notes resulted from a failed super-strong adhesive. Pacemakers emerged from equipment designed to record heart rhythms. The obstacle became the way forward. Try this right now. Think of a current challenge you're facing, something that's been causing you stress or concern. For the next 30 seconds, brainstorm at least 2 ways this obstacle might actually be creating opportunities that wouldn't exist otherwise. Don't overthink it. Just let the possibilities emerge. Did you find at least 2? If so, you've just activated the neural pathway associated with adversity leverage. If you struggled, that's completely normal. This cognitive skill takes practice, especially in a culture that trains us to see obstacles as purely negative. A powerful exercise to develop this intelligence marker is what I call obstacle reframing. When facing any challenge, complete this sentence. This obstacle exists to fill in the blank with possibilities that empower rather than diminish you. This obstacle exists to teach me patience. This obstacle exists to help me develop new skills. This obstacle exists to connect me with others facing similar challenges. The biology of adversity provides a perfect analogy. Physical muscles grow through resistance. The obstacle, weight, becomes the way, strength. Similarly, our mental and practical capabilities grow through facing resistance. Without obstacles, we remain weak and undeveloped. As you practice adversity leverage this week, you'll likely notice resistance from your habitual thinking patterns. When facing problems, your mind has well-worn neural pathways of frustration, victimhood, or simple endurance. Creating new pathways of opportunity seeking requires consistent practice and a willingness to think differently than those around you. Week 4 shifts our focus to developing emotional sovereignty, that crucial ability to experience emotions without being controlled by them. 3 times each day this week, preferably when experiencing strong emotions, I want you to implement the 90-second rule based on neurological research showing that the physiological response to emotions naturally subsides after about 90 seconds. When you notice a strong emotion arising, follow this simple protocol. First, name the emotion specifically. Don't just say, "I'm upset." Are you disappointed, frustrated, anxious? Naming emotions with precision activates your prefrontal cortex, beginning the process of regaining sovereignty. Second, locate where you feel it in your body. Is there tightness in your chest? A knot in your stomach? Tension in your shoulders? This body awareness pulls you out of abstract rumination and into concrete experience. Third, simply breathe and observe the sensation for 90 seconds without acting on it. Don't try to change it or make it go away. Just watch it with curiosity, like a scientist studying an interesting phenomenon. Finally, only after completing these steps, decide how to respond. By day 3 of practicing this technique, you'll likely notice the intensity of emotional reactions beginning to decrease. By day 7, you'll experience moments of clarity during emotional situations that previously would have hijacked your thinking. A client once told me this practice seemed too simple to be effective. 2 weeks later, she called to share how it had completely transformed a high-stakes negotiation. Instead of reacting defensively to aggressive tactics, she observed her emotions, waited 90 seconds, and responded strategically, securing terms her counterpart later admitted he never expected to concede. This isn't about suppressing emotions or becoming cold and calculating. It's about experiencing emotions fully while maintaining the cognitive clarity to choose how you respond to them. As Epictetus taught, make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. An important distinction in developing emotional sovereignty is the language we use internally. Notice the difference between "I am angry" and "I am experiencing sensations of anger." The first identification fully merges you with the emotion. The second creates a small but crucial space between you and the experience. This isn't semantic wordplay. It reflects a fundamental shift in your relationship with emotional states. Try this right now. Think of a situation that's currently causing you some emotional discomfort. First, notice how it feels to think, "I am emotion." Then shift to, "I am experiencing sensations of emotion." Feel the difference? That subtle shift in language creates space for your higher intelligence to operate, even while experiencing strong feelings. Emotional sovereignty transforms how you navigate conflicts. When someone criticizes you, for example, emotional reactivity might drive you to defend, attack, or withdraw. But with emotional sovereignty, you can feel the initial sting while maintaining access to your wisdom about how best to respond. You might choose to ask clarifying questions, express appreciation for feedback, or calmly disagree. Options that are rarely available to someone in the grip of emotional reaction. A helpful image comes from Epictetus, who suggested we view our emotions like weather patterns. It's like a storm arising. The weather and winds are not in your control, but how you face them is. Just as we wouldn't scold ourselves for noticing it's raining, we don't need to judge ourselves for experiencing emotions. The intelligence lies in how we relate to them. As you develop emotional sovereignty, you'll notice tangible benefits across all areas of life. Relationships improve as you respond rather than react. Decision-making becomes clearer as emotions inform rather than overwhelm your thinking. Creativity flourishes as you can tolerate the uncertainty inherent in the creative process. The combination of adversity leverage and emotional sovereignty creates extraordinary resilience. You not only see the potential advantages in difficulties, adversity leverage, but maintain the emotional clarity to act on those insights, emotional sovereignty. This combination transforms how you experience challenges at the most fundamental level. Seneca understood this connection when he wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." The strengthening happens not just through enduring difficulties, but through engaging with them from a place of emotional clarity rather than reactivity. As you practice these two capabilities together this week, notice how they reinforce each other. Emotional sovereignty creates the clarity needed to identify opportunities within obstacles. Adversity leverage provides a constructive channel for emotional energy that might otherwise become overwhelming. I recommend combining these practices when facing significant challenges. First, use the 90-second rule to create emotional clarity. Then, from that clear space, ask the 3 adversity leverage questions to identify opportunities within the obstacle. By the end of these 2 weeks, you'll have developed 2 powerful forms of intelligence that transform your relationship with life's inevitable challenges. Rather than being derailed by difficulties, you'll have the capacity to use them as catalysts for growth and opportunity. The Stoics understood something profound that modern psychology has only recently confirmed. Our greatest growth often comes not from comfort, but from constructively engaging with challenges. As Epictetus, who lived much of his life as a slave with a physical disability, taught, "The greater the difficulty, the more glory in surmounting it." With the foundations of cognitive separation and mental prototyping established in weeks 1 and 2, and the transformative capabilities of adversity leverage and emotional sovereignty developed in weeks 3 and 4, we're ready to advance to the final stages of our Stoic Intelligence program. In the next 2 weeks, we'll develop the most sophisticated forms of Stoic intelligence: value discernment and interconnected thinking. Capabilities that don't just help you respond wisely to what happens, but fundamentally transform how you see reality itself. The practice we'll begin tomorrow can literally save years of your life that might otherwise be spent pursuing what doesn't truly matter. Now that you've developed the core capabilities of the Stoic mind, separating facts from interpretations, anticipating consequences, leveraging adversity, and mastering emotions, you're ready for the final stage of your transformation. In these last 2 weeks, we'll focus on the most refined aspects of Stoic intelligence, discerning what truly matters and seeing connections that others miss. Week 5 is dedicated entirely to practicing value discernment, that rare ability to distinguish between what's genuinely important and what merely appears important in our distraction-filled world. Each day this week, I want you to examine your choices through the lens of value alignment rather than external validation. The daily practice involves asking 3 questions before making decisions. First, is this choice aligned with my authentic values, or merely responding to external expectations? This question immediately cuts through social pressure and helps you recognize when you're acting to please others rather than honoring what matters to you. Second, will this matter 1 year from now, 5 years from now? This temporal perspective instantly clarifies what deserves your attention. Third, if no one else ever knew about this decision, would I still make the same choice? This question reveals whether you're seeking validation or genuine value. I recommend creating a values inventory this week. Take 20 minutes to list the 5 to 7 principles that genuinely matter to you. Not what you think should matter or what others have told you to value, but what you truly care about when you're being completely honest with yourself. Keep this inventory somewhere visible and reference it when making decisions. As Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little who is poor, but the one who hankers after more." This insight cuts to the heart of our modern predicament. We're surrounded by messages telling us what should matter: career advancement, social status, material possessions, digital validation. Yet many who achieve these things still feel empty. I witnessed this intelligence marker in a professional who turned down a prestigious, high-paying position to accept a role that better aligned with his values and skills. His colleagues thought he was making a terrible mistake, but 5 years later, he had not only advanced further in his career, but maintained his health and relationships. areas his former colleagues had sacrificed in pursuit of status. Apply this practice to both small daily decisions and larger life choices. Should you check social media or read something meaningful? Should you work late or be present with loved ones? Should you pursue that promotion or develop a different aspect of your life? By day 7, you'll notice a shift in how you evaluate options, revealing an intelligence that cuts through social conditioning. Marcus Aurelius, despite being emperor of Rome with access to every luxury imaginable, wrote in his private journal, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." This wasn't philosophical abstraction. It was practical wisdom from someone who had everything yet recognized that true value lay elsewhere. Try this exercise right now. Think of something you purchased recently that cost more than $100. What was the underlying value you were pursuing? Was it comfort, status, security, novelty? Now consider whether that purchase actually delivered on that value. This simple reflection develops the mental muscle of discernment that most people never exercise. The deathbed perspective is another powerful tool for developing value discernment. Imagine yourself at the end of life, looking back. What decisions will you be glad you made? What will you regret? This isn't morbid, it's clarifying. As Seneca advised, let all your activity be directed to some goal. The deathbed perspective immediately reveals which goals actually matter. Social media provides a perfect laboratory for practicing value discernment. Before engaging with any content, ask yourself, is this aligned with what truly matters to me, or is it merely capturing my attention? This simple question can transform your relationship with digital technology from passive consumption to active choice. One powerful technique is conducting what I call a value audit of your calendar and expenses for the past month. How much time and money went toward what you claim to value versus what society tells you to value? This honest assessment often reveals gaps between stated values and actual choices. Epictetus taught his students to divide things into two categories: things within our control and things outside our control. This simple distinction is a powerful tool for value discernment. When you focus your energy on what you can control, your judgments, actions, and values, you automatically align with what genuinely matters. As you strengthen your value discernment this week, you'll likely notice friction with conventional thinking. Our culture rewards quick decisions based on immediate benefits or social validation. The intelligence to pause and evaluate choices against deeper values often appears inefficient in the short term, while proving profoundly efficient in the long term. By developing this intelligence marker, you create an internal compass that guides decisions large and small. Rather than being swayed by whatever seems important in the moment, whatever triggers the strongest emotion or carries the loudest social validation, you navigate by what genuinely matters according to your deepest values. Week 6 introduces our final and perhaps most powerful Stoic intelligence marker, interconnected thinking, seeing relationships between seemingly unrelated concepts. This cognitive ability drives innovation and creative problem-solving in ways that linear thinking simply cannot match. The daily practice this week is what I call concept bridging. First, choose a challenge or problem you're currently facing. Second, select something completely unrelated, a natural process, an object in your room, a hobby. Third, force connections between them by asking, how is this problem like that unrelated thing? Fourth, extract principles or insights from these forced connections. For example, if you're struggling with team communication, you might select tree roots as your unrelated concept. This could lead to insights about invisible support systems, the importance of nutrient exchange, or how damage in one area affects the whole system. This exercise feels awkward at first. I remember feeling silly doing it. But neuroscience shows that forcing these unlikely connections strengthens neural pathways associated with creative problem solving. By week's end, you'll begin seeing connections that others miss entirely. Marcus Aurelius understood this when he wrote, "All things are implicated with one another, and the bond is holy." This wasn't mysticism, but a practical recognition that understanding comes from seeing connections rather than isolated parts. Try a quick concept bridge right now. Think of a current challenge you're facing, then look around your environment and select a random object. Take 30 seconds to find connections between them. This immediate practice activates neural pathways associated with interconnected thinking. I saw this intelligence in action with a marketing professional who consistently created breakthrough campaigns by connecting concepts from biology, architecture, or literature to marketing challenges, creating solutions that seemed like magic to those with more linear thinking patterns. Leonardo da Vinci exemplified this approach centuries ago. He didn't see himself as separately studying art, anatomy, engineering, and botany. He saw interconnected patterns across all these domains. His innovations came precisely from transferring principles between fields that others saw as entirely separate. You can practice this daily through idea cross-pollination. Spend 15 minutes learning about something completely outside your usual interests. Then explicitly ask, how might principles from this domain apply to challenges in my work or life? This regular practice strengthens the neural pathways associated with interconnected thinking. Cognitive science refers to this as analogical thinking, and research shows it's more predictive of creative problem-solving ability than traditional IQ measures. When you can see patterns across different domains, you access solutions invisible to linear thinkers. A powerful variation is the three-domain challenge. When facing a difficult problem, deliberately seek insights from three completely different domains. For instance, if you're redesigning a customer experience, you might look for principles from architecture, how spaces guide movement, ecology, how systems adapt to change, and storytelling, how narratives create emotional engagement. Now, let's look at how life transforms when you consistently practice these 6 Stoic intelligence markers. What awaits you in the coming months as you integrate these practices into your daily life? The most immediate change you'll notice is the evaporation of that nagging voice that has questioned your intelligence. This isn't because you've artificially boosted your confidence. It's because you've begun recognizing and using forms of intelligence that genuinely matter in real-world situations. When you stop doubting your intelligence, you naturally contribute more in meetings, pursue challenging projects, and solve problems more creatively. This isn't just a change in how you feel about yourself. It creates tangible results in your work and relationships. As you strengthen these intelligence markers, you'll make decisions that initially puzzle others but ultimately prove wise. Your capacity to separate facts from interpretations, to see potential consequences, to leverage adversity, to maintain emotional clarity, to discern true value, and to recognize connections. These capabilities together create a level of wisdom that appears almost prescient to others. Perhaps most valuable in today's rapidly changing world, these Stoic intelligence markers create what philosopher Nassim Taleb calls anti-fragility, the ability to not just withstand disruption, but grow stronger because of it. When artificial intelligence and automation transform industries, those with developed Stoic intelligence adapt and thrive, while others struggle to adjust. The transformation extends far beyond your professional life. As these intelligence markers become second nature, you'll notice relationships improve as your emotional sovereignty prevents unnecessary conflicts, and your value discernment helps you invest in connections that truly matter. Health benefits emerge as you make decisions aligned with genuine well-being rather than responding to stress or external pressures. Creative pursuits flourish as your interconnected thinking generates ideas and approaches others can't imagine. One client described this transformation perfectly. I used to think I needed to become smarter to solve my problems. Now I realize I needed to recognize how smart I already was in ways that actually matter. As we conclude our time together, I want to challenge you to commit to just one practice from what we've covered, the one that resonated most strongly with you. Don't try to implement all 6 intelligence markers at once. Begin with the one that feels most relevant to your current challenges. Practice it consistently for 2 weeks before adding another. The transformation we've discussed isn't theoretical. It's waiting for you to activate it through these specific practices. The intelligence you've been seeking has been within you all along, merely waiting for the right framework to express itself. Remember what Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journal: "You have power over your mind, not outside events." The 6 intelligence markers we've explored are the practical application of this profound truth. Pause right now and make a specific commitment about which practice you'll implement tomorrow. Say it out loud or write it down to strengthen your intention. The next time that voice of doubt whispers that you're not intelligent enough, you'll have something powerful to whisper back. I possess forms of intelligence that truly matter, and I'm developing them every day. That's not just positive thinking. It's the recognition of a truth that the ancient Stoics discovered centuries ago and that modern science confirms today. True intelligence isn't what you've been led to believe. It's what you're now equipped to recognize and develop within yourself.